Welcome back to the Sideline Breakdown. So it was an exciting weekend of rugby, lots of Champions Cup and EPCR Challenge Cup rugby that went on this past weekend. I think there was some mixed results for the South African team. So yeah, I think we have a lot to go through in this show. But before we start, I would like to welcome Carl to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Rock Norris. Good to be here. Wish it was under better circumstances. But we move on, chat a bit about the rugby. I do think it was a mixed bag for the South African sides. But yeah, can't complain. I think they dive straight into the rugby and the results. What do you make of this weekend's games for the South African sides?
Yeah, I think we can start off with the Champions Cup. Obviously, Saturday was a good result for our South African sides in the Champions Cup. The Stormers, I think, comfortably beating La Rochelle, and then the Sharks beating Saracens at home. I think it was a bit of a shock upset for them, even at home. So I think it was good for them to get that victory over a quality Saracen side. And then today, Bulls losing out to Northampton. Obviously, not a good result for you guys, but yeah, I think they start off with the Stormers game. What did you make of the game?
Look, comfortable win at the end of the day for the Stormers. I think they played well. Individual players playing extremely well. I think there was a couple guys, well, a couple instances where I thought you guys looked a bit complacent. I think at the end of the day it was a comfortable win, but I think there was a time where La Rochelle was reasonably close. Obviously, you guys had a couple of disallowed tries in the beginning, but at the end of the day, look, I think you guys the Stormers are probably the team to beat at the moment. Looking at form, I think Paul de Villiers another fantastic game. I think you guys are looking really really strong. I thought you guys probably should have won a bit more comfortably. Looking at the side that you guys were and the side you guys played, but I mean you guys, you play the team that's in front of you. So at the end of the day, 42-21 comfortable win, good victory, a good start to the Champions Cup for the Stormers, and I think if they can really push on, ensure that they don't get complacent, they're going to look really really good. And in terms of the South African side, it's probably the one team that can really push forward and go far in the competition, really. So yeah, what do you think of it?
You hit the nail on the head there where you said that, yeah, play the team that's in front of you. I think this game actually reminded me of the first test that South Africa played against Australia, where we got that 22 points to no lead. We built the momentum, and then all of a sudden there was a momentum shift and the other team got back into the game. I just think we overplayed. We didn't really stick to our structure, and that's something that we said against the Japan game, where the Springboks really stick to the structure. You knew it would have been a runaway game, exactly the same as against Wales. They stick to the structures, and then they scored when they needed to score. So I think, given the opposition and the start that we had, we just overplayed. So we didn't stick to our structures, and that obviously let them back in the game. As you mentioned, two disallowed tries. I think that's also a real big momentum shifter. And then if you give a few penalties away, you let the opposition back in the game. Even though it was the second or third string squad, they are still a quality opposition, and they showed it in the way that they fought back in the game. So yeah, I give credit to them. But yeah, I think for the first 50 minutes, or let's say between minute 15 and minute 50, it was really a frustrating performance from a Stormers perspective and a fan's perspective, because you expect so much more actually from them. But I think at the end of the day, to still get the 5 points is a good result. And, to top the log after two rounds, I think we would have taken that at the beginning of the tournament.
100%. Sorry. I mean, 100%. I think you guys, the disallowed tries was probably a momentum breaker. I think if you guys had gotten those tries, you probably would have kicked on, and after that, probably would have been a runaway game. Do you think that the you guys, like you mentioned, did overplay a bit at times. Obviously, you guys have got very skillful players in Galant and Sasha in the mix there who want to try things, and it's always great to see when it obviously doesn't come off. It's quite frustrating. There were actually a couple. I think it was La Rochelle's second or third try where who was it? Someone knocked the ball on. Oh, I think it was Dylan Moore who knocked the ball on Ruan Ackerman in a offside position, left the ball. They managed to get the ball and no one seemed to really react. They just kind of left it. And the guy, I can't remember who it was, picked up, got close to got close to the try line and then they scored very easily. I think it was a silly mistake. Obviously, Rowan Ackerman being offside knew that he was offside and left the ball. Do you expect someone to kind of, just react and not let it be, I don't know, so easy. And then there was another instant as well where I thought, I don't know, you guys just fell asleep. They got a penalty, quick tap, and the forwards just kind of stood there. And again, a lot of meters gained. Thankfully, Paul de Villiers turned the ball over after that, not long after. That was great. But I think instances where you guys just was a bit complacent, I suppose. And I'm sure Dobson probably would have given them a real talking to at half time. And at the end of the day, you guys took a comfortable win. But yeah, any players that kind of stood out for you for you guys?
I think before I start with someone that stood out, I think you obviously know that I'm a big fan of Warwick Land, but I just felt like on Saturday, just the things that he did and the decisions that he made, I didn't completely understand, because there's a lot of instances where he gives passes that aren't there to pass, or he gives kicks that shouldn't be kicked. So I think it was just frustrating in the way he played. I'm not sure what triggers him to play the way he does nowadays because he's actually a quality player. I don't know what to make of that.
I mean, I think he obviously is someone who does try a lot of things. Is a very skillful player. I agree, he's a quality player, and he probably, if he can simplify his game, will probably be even better. If I look at someone, I mean, we let's be honest as well. The only reason we speak about Sasha in such high regard is the things that he does, come off. And, Warwick at a stage, these things were coming off. The outrageous dummies, the kicks, everything that he did. And obviously it's not coming off at the moment, which is then very frustrating. So I think it happens with a lot of players and us as fans see things and we wonder why isn't the coach saying something? And I think it's probably whether someone's having the conversation and he's not doing it, or whether people are just kind of letting him do what he does. If he can simplify his game, I agree. I think he'd be a much better player, and I think actually he'd be considered for the box because I think he's that type of quality player. You can play wing, you can play fullback, and when you look at the depth that we have at fullback, I don't think we have outrageous numbers at fullback. I think Warwick Cullen could certainly be considered, but I agree. I don't think he's the type of player, form-wise, decision-making. I just don't think is really on his side. To be completely honest.
Oh, I think it's just a combination of, poor decision making and poor execution. Because when he needs to pass, he kicks, and when he needs to kick, he tries to pass. It's just like getting that decision making to where it was when he was like on form. I mean, in 2019 when he was picked for the Springbok World Cup side, I mean that was probably his best year in the build up to the World Cup. So I think for him to get that form back, he just needs to work on his decision making, and especially with the 50-50 passes. I mean, rather keep the ball, set up the ruck, and then play from there on instead of, throwing a 50-50, losing possession, and then you stand the chance to have the opposition play on turnover ball. So that can be quite dangerous. So I think if you can just get that right, then you should be okay. But the question is just when would he get it right?
Well, I mean, I think that's the problem is decision making is not really something that you can teach really or coach. It's something that happens in game instinctively. And if a player doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. If he does, he does. I suppose, sorry, the way to get around that is, of course, having discussions with him, explaining in this scenario, should have done this, should have done that. But again, instincts in a game kicks in and you either have it or you don't. So unfortunately, I think it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be difficult for him to really change his game at this stage of his career. He's quite late into his career already, and I think he's the type of player that that's what he does. And if it comes off, it comes off. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, I think he's got one of the probably the best dummy in the world. I always laugh when I see him dummy guys. It's very funny, but it's very effective. But yeah, I think he does try and do things unnecessarily, and I think it is probably his downfall at the end of the day in terms of being less frustrating, unfortunately.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully, you can get that right. But yeah, back to your question about who stood out for me. I think background wise, I think Dylan Mort had an exceptional game at wing again. For me, he's just getting better and better end of the weekend. I think he's settling in to the type of rugby the Stormers are playing as well as the opposition that he's facing. So I think he had a good game, and also his aerial skills is good. His running with the ball is good, and his defense is also solid. So I think if he keeps on playing like that, that he's definitely someone that the Stormers should invest in. He's a good option for us to have there on the wing. And I also think that Kubus Rana had a good game, just the way he handled this type of game, because it could have gotten worse from here, especially the way we played. So I think just the way he settled us, we attacked when we needed to attack and defended well. So he as well. And then in the fourth, I think obviously Paul de Villiers had an exceptional game. I mean, yeah, he's the player we needed for a couple of seasons now, and we found him. And I think a lot of sides want a Paul de Villiers at this stage because, yeah, I think he's currently one of the best pitchers in South Africa. So, exceptional game. If you watch the game and you see Paul de Villiers is lurking, then you're just wondering what truck is he going to eat and poach the ball. So, no, I mean, it's great to have a player like him in the side and also seeing him reach his potential that we saw a couple of years ago. So, yeah, it's good to see. And then also, I think Ben Jason Dixon also had a solid game. His carries was good, his line out work was good. So, yeah, I was also impressed by him. And you?
No, I agree. I think each player you mentioned there, great games. Paul de Villiers obviously winning man of the match again. Fantastic player. I think literally he's Dion Ferry's regen. And, the Stormers looked at their worst when Dion Ferry wasn't there. So to find a replacement like for like pretty much in Paul de Villiers, I think is great. And, you speak about the fetching, but, he's really strong with ball in hand. He's very strong in the tackle. He's actually extremely mobile. So really, really good player, and I think you guys have got a fantastic player on your hands. And I think what's great is, he's a player from the Stormers' youth setup, which is another positive one. So, yeah, great player. I think Ben Jason, as well as you mentioned, Quivers Reinach, Sasha. I think Sasha will always give you magic moments, which he did again. So good player. I think his kicking was a bit off the tee, but otherwise solid enough game. Who else? Dylan Mort again. I think he's someone who, I mean, again, another find. The Stormers seem to have a knack of finding players at smaller teams and coaching them and making them into either the next big thing or really, really solid players for the Stormers themselves. You think about Vincent Koch, all these guys who went on to came from the Pumas or the Griquas or whoever and went on to have really, really good careers. So I think the Stormers are very good at finding these types of players. So yeah, I think you guys obviously dominated in the scrum. Let me think now. Yeah, no, I think each player for a couple mistakes here and there. I think everyone had a really solid game. Evan Roos is a very frustrating player. Again, I think finding unnecessary moments to frustrate, to get under the skin of other players. I mean, he gets under my skin just watching him, and I'm supporting the Stormers. So I don't know what you make of Evan Roos in terms of that. Obviously, we had the conversation before, but yeah, really quite irritating to be honest.
And for sure. And I think also just the way he played in the sense of the aerial game and his receiving thereof. He knocked on a few attempts that he went for the to catch the ball, and we spoke about this earlier. Is the fact that his hands isn't where it should be, at that level. And that is his biggest problem. He's an exceptional player, but he just needs to sort out his handling because he just knocks the ball on too easily. And he's also not that number eight you can rely on, at the back to receive kicks. Especially the high balls, because I saw this past weekend, I think there was two or three instances where he couldn't regather the kicks. Yeah, that's quite concerning. And also, as you mentioned, the fact that sometimes it's just frustrating in the way that he just decides when to get under the skin of the position. I don't think it's the right time to do it, and just in the manner he does it. So, yeah, you're just scared that the referee will see it the wrong way and then he goes off the field. So that's a problem. And I think another few negatives, if we can mention that, is our line out. I don't think it was that great this weekend. It was a bit of an issue. And then also in the second half, again, our kick receives. When Connor Evans was on the field, again, he missed the ball, I think, two or three times. So that's also just frustrating. I don't know. I mean, surely as a lock, you should be able to handle that situation. So again, as I mentioned the week before, our kick receives was not great when he was on the field, and again when he came on, it wasn't great. So yeah, I think in that sense, in the lock department, we have an issue. I mean, between Murat and Connor Evans, I don't think they are the best choices. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
100%. I mean, do you think it's a throw-in issue, or do you think it's the line out south?
I think it's the line itself. I couldn't see any issues with the throw-ins either from both hookers. I think it's just the way they set up, and by the time they need to lift the lifter, where the timing is incorrect between where he throws in the ball and where he should catch the ball. That's where their biggest issue lies. It's just the timing, and you will have that issues because obviously we're rotating almost weekend and week out between the starting hookers as well as the starting locks. Because I mean, JD started this week together with Ben Jason Dixon, who was our main lineup jumper. So I think you will get that timing issues if you rotate that much. So it's just ensuring that everyone is on the same page going forward with regard to the timing.
Oh, I mean, fair enough. So would you stick with JD and Murat, or what would you go with? Obviously, Andre Smith still has to come back, but who's your combination that you go with?
Well, I'll stick to my previous call of starting with Audrey Smith and JD. They are, in my opinion, currently our best options. I think Audrey is a bit more physical. Obviously, now and then his head leaves him and then he makes stupid decisions. But I think if he can sort that out, then he's my starting look with JD. I think that's our best combination currently, based on form.
I mean, I think the problem is you look at someone like Ibn Itzebeth, who's fantastic in the lineup, but also physical. I think you're missing that dominator who is also extremely good in the lineup. Same with RGS Snyman, same type of player, very physical, but in the lineouts you don't win. So yeah, I think you guys can sort that out. So I think JD Schikkeling is your number five option in my opinion as well. Number four is a probably a hopefully sort out issue in the future kind of thing. But yeah, there was. I think that's. I'm not sure if you want to mention anything else about on the Stormers game. Otherwise, we can move on to the Sharks. I think.
Yeah, no, I think let's move on to the Sharks game. Sharks against Saracens. I mean, it wasn't the best of conditions. I mean, it was pouring down. So for both teams, I think it was actually a high scoring game given the conditions. So yeah, I was actually surprised in the way that both teams played. I mean, they weren't was not afraid to attack when they needed to. So yeah, I think it was actually a good game given the circumstances. I don't know what's your opinion on the game.
No, I completely agree. It's obviously always difficult to play in wet weather. A team coming from England, you'd expect them to put up a fight. Obviously, they're much more used to conditions in terms of wet weather, colder weather. I think the benefit for the Sharks is the fact that they won the game, a bit of a confidence boost. JP Peterson's first game in charge is a win, which is always a good thing. I think the problem the Sharks will have, and I'll mention it with the Bulls as well, is if the coaching staff hasn't changed much, all you've done really is change the head coach. So, how much is actually going to change moving forward for the Sharks. But I think a good confidence boost for them, and hopefully they can kick on for the rest of the season with this game because they do have quality players. So yeah, we'll see what they do moving forward. But I think positive for them. The goal was probably just to win the game, really, more than anything else. To be fair.
For sure. And I think there was obviously a few good performances from the Sharks. I think they're a bit of an inexperienced front row, but I think they stood up well against the opposition they had because their scrums went well and obviously their lineouts was great. So they had a great set piece from lineout to maul, scoring a few tries from that. So no, I must say they were an improved side in the sense of their set pieces as well as their kicking game was much better. I think obviously Grant Williams made a big difference coming in the side because obviously you could see that energy that he brings to the game and just that experience that he built up with the Springboks, I think has helped him a lot because just the way that he manages the play is so much better now. He knows when to attack, he knows when to kick, he knows when to slow the game down. So I think that was good from a Sharks perspective. And also, a guy that is worth mentioning is George Whitehead. I think the old campaigner, he had an excellent game, just the way he managed it from a far off perspective. He kicked well. I think he didn't kick a bad kick at all. And that's really important in that type of weather. Yeah, I think he also had a great game. And obviously, Andre, man of the match. The Sharks don't really have that big physical players up front. I think I will get to that point a bit later. But he really brought that physicality, and that's something that the Sharks lacked in previous weeks. So that was really good. And then, yeah, in the front row, what I've noticed now the last couple of weeks is they don't really have that big physical forwards. Obviously, with Eben not there, they don't really have that big locks to get them to go forward that Eben would provide. And then the back row, obviously, Sia was back this weekend, but other than Sia, they don't really have that big physical forwards anymore. I mean, Pepsi and Vincent, they are big guys, but they don't give that presence on the field for me. They don't get that go forward ball, they don't dominate guys, run over them. And I think that's something that the Sharks currently lack, is that big players that can run over players and give you that forward momentum that you actually need for the backline to fire.
No, look, I completely agree. I was gonna, I was actually gonna mention Grant Williams and George Whitehead as well. Shout out to them. I think Grant Williams really brought a different dynamic. Obviously, he's a scrum half in good form now as well, but he really brought the quality that the Sharks needed in such a critical position. And then George Whitehead as well. I agree. He's not the flashy type. He's not gonna, hit gaps, and he's not necessarily gonna put guys in gaps. But what he does know how to do is experienced campaigner. He knows how to manage a game. His kicking was on point, so I think that combination worked really well in this game, especially a game where it's raining, it's wet, a game where you really need to manage a game. And I think George Whitehead did really stand up there. I think the combination of Andre Esterhuizen and Ethan Hooker at center, two very big guys. Ethan being obviously a lot quicker than Andre, but Andre, getting that gain line success, getting that advantage. Physicality. I mean, I don't think there's many people in world rugby that can physically match Andre Esterhuizen, especially when it comes to the back line. And Ethan Hooker, I mean, he's still only 20, 22, roundabout there, still very young. He's still got a lot of growing to do as well, but he's also a very big guy with a lot of pace. So I think that combination worked out quite well. And obviously Edwell Napimpi on the wings, I also thought had decent enough games. But I think um, another important player that came back was actually Apalele Fassi. They actually had a fullback instead of shoehorning Jordan Hendrickse or Joop Bentley, Edward van der Merwe at fullback. They actually had a fullback player at fullback. So I think that was also another really important factor when it came to the Sharks' play. But in terms of physicality, I do agree with you. I don't think they have that physically dominant forward that most South African teams actually do have. I think Pepsi and Vincent very physical or very mobile rather. Sorry, they bring a different dynamic to the team, but I don't think ball in hand is really one of those things. Sia is obviously very good with ball in hand, but yeah, the Sharks, in terms of their forwards, don't really have ball carriers that will, at least 5, 6 times out of 10 get you over the advantage line and get the back line moving forward. So I think they do lack in that department, which is quite strange for the team that they are. But yeah, I think moving forward, it's something that they'll probably have to sort out. So yeah.
Oh, I have two questions for you. So, one, given Ethan Hooker's performance at outside centre this weekend, do you think that should be his position rather going forward in the future than inside centre, given the pace that he has? And two, what did you make of Apalele Fasi's return? Because I don't think he had the best game when he was on the pitch. Yeah, I would like to hear your opinion on those two remarks.
I mean, look, I think Ethan obviously has the pace to play outside centre and the size to play inside. So I think he's actually a very good combination and an option that you can, he's a benefit for whatever team, whether it be for the Box or for the Sharks. Obviously, he can play wing as well because he's got the speed for that as well. Personally, I'd love to see him play inside centre. It's a bit difficult with Andre Esterhuizen there now in that spot, and Ethan Hooker has obviously played quite well at outside centre, and that combination works. I think works quite well. But I think long term, I'd love to see him play inside centre. I think he's got the size for it, and if you have someone like that with the speed that he has, I think it'll be quite a dangerous combination if you can. If I take for example someone like Cayman Moody, if I look for the box, or even Lorenzo Julius, if he can find form as well, I think that a combination like that would work really well and be a very dangerous one. A very dangerous one as well. And then on Fussy, look, I'm not saying Fussy necessarily had the best game this weekend, but what I would say is he knows how to play fullback much better than again shoehorning someone like Jordan Hendricks or Edwell or York Bentley, who I don't think is necessarily great at wing, and now they put him at fullback as well. So I just think in terms of gameplay, positioning, everything a fullback needs to know. Obviously, Fussy is able to do that. So I just think it's more. What's the word? I think it brings more certainty to the Sharks' game plan than someone else that they really don't have, to be honest with you. So I just think Fussy brings a certainty that other players don't.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but just throwing a spanner in the works here is I think he will also miss a few weeks again because of the head knock that he got there at the beginning of the second half. So obviously the Sharks will not be able to use him for a few weeks, I think, because he was out cold. So the question is, where do they go from here? I think Jordan Henderson didn't have a bad game when he came on at fullback. I think he actually had a decent game. So maybe they will switch between George Whitehead and Jordan to fill in that gap at fullback.
Yeah, I'm not sure about George Whitehead fullback. I would probably guess that Jordan Hendrickson would be the option at fullback, but I really don't think he's a very good fullback, and that's what I'm saying with Fussy. He brings more of a certainty at fullback than someone else would, and like the Bulls, I think the Sharks do have an issue at fullback when Fussy isn't there. Yeah, you kind of playing players there that don't on special or aren't specialized in that position. And in all honesty, fullback is probably reasonably specialized. So yeah, we'll see what the Sharks or how they're going to perform moving forward. But I think it is probably going to be a slight issue for them.
Yeah, but I think it's a step in the right direction for the Sharks. I think at least you can see the positives and they are moving forward from here. So I think only time will tell. So let's see how that goes. But on a negative note, last game, Bulls, Northampton. I think I can give it over to you.
Yeah, I must say I've at least had a bit of time to calm down. But I mean, what a shocker! I don't think I think let's start with. I think it's probably one of the worst performances I've seen from a Bulls side. Mistake after mistake. I mean, I think they're gonna have to do an investigation in terms of how are these guys actually making money doing this, because I don't think they actually showed up. It was weird. I don't think anyone really looked like they were in the mood to play. They, again, just mistake after mistake. They ran through so easy, no hard work. Defense was shocking. I mean, look, considering half time, we were only, what was it, 14-7, if I remember correctly, to go, or 14-5, yeah, sorry, to lose 55 at the end of the game. I mean, That's what 36 unanswered points. How bad do you get? And it kind of follows on from last weekend's game against Bordeaux, where you bring the bench on, or the second half. Let's say the second half, and things just kind of fall apart. So it's a big issue, and I think it's actually an issue that starts from the top and goes right through. We changed the head coach and no other coaching staff, and expect Jan Ackerman to work wonders with the same set of players and the same coaching staff. And actually saw an article on who wrote the article. Someone wrote the article about something about was Jake White the real issue or something like that. And on the face of it, you kind of go, well, yeah, he was the issue. But you go and read the article, it makes a valid point. Is Johan Ackerman has come in, but nothing else around him has changed. We can say Jake White was this problem and that problem, but I don't think his coaches around him are necessarily good enough. I can't say that for a fact because I don't 100% know. But based on the evidence, I think Johan Ackerman has proven that over the number of years, he's taken players that you probably wouldn't have necessarily had a second look at and turned them into Springboks. Taken a Lions team and built them from the ground up. I went to Gloucester and went to Japan. He proved it with the baby box now this year with the under 20 championship. Obviously had a big part to play there. Yeah, and then also, sorry, I had a lot of time to think about this, so that's why I'm carrying on. And then also, after the second or third game in the URC, Willem Strauss has the audacity to come out and say, this wasn't good enough, yet nothing around him that we've been saying under Jake White wasn't good enough has actually changed. So, yeah, there's a desperate rebuild that I think needs to happen. And obviously, the Bulls have got some very, very good players. Springboks, even in today's game, I think there are some good players there. But I think there's a lot of them that can't actually play the way Jan Ackerman wants to play, I think. And I think that at the end of the day is also a massive problem. But yeah, anyways, what did you make of the game?
Yeah, look, so I don't know what's going wrong there down in Pretoria because obviously in the Cape we had our issues of mismanagement and all of that stuff. But what do you actually think is the solution? Because, I mean, you mentioned now a lot of problems, but in your opinion, what would you change or like to see change for it to get better?
So, firstly, I think Jan Ackerman needs a coaching staff that has a similar philosophy to what he has in terms of how they play. Um, I mean, the coaching staff that was there, or that is there now currently, coached, and their philosophy was essentially a lot of what Jake White had in terms of how he wanted to play. And I think coaching staff would be my number one priority. I think I'd get a couple of guys to really build around Jan Ackerman, and I think it's important to have Jan Ackerman's input into who he would like to bring in, if he knows anyone, obviously. So that's where I'd start. And then I think the playing staff needs quite a big reshuffle. Again, we have a couple of good players and a couple of decent squad players. But again, I don't think they're necessarily able to play the way that Johan Ackerman wants to play. I mean, just on today's game, looking at the starting lineup and the bench, I counted 10 or 11 players that I would actually keep long term. The rest of them, in my opinion, should go. I don't know where. They can go to other unions, they can go overseas if they really want to. I don't really care. But I think we need a desperate reshuffle in terms of playing squad in our depth. I think that's a massive issue. So yeah, those are the two things. Actually, the only two things that I think need to change right now. Um, Obviously, playing stuff is going to be difficult to change right now, but in the next couple of years, that should be the priority, in my opinion.
And look, it's actually a big problem because you were finalists of the URC. I think in the last 3 years you were finalists and you couldn't win. And obviously, Jake left while you were runners up in the last URC final. So it's difficult to say that you need time to rebuild because I mean you have the same squad, you have the same players, you basically have the same coaching staff. It's just your head coach that changed, as you mentioned earlier. So the problem is where did it change from you being finalist, almost winning the URC, to you being beaten 50 points to 5 and you being beaten at home? So where did it change?
Well, again, I think it's a case of, well, one, Johan Ackerman's philosophy. I think we've seen over and obviously the last number of years with the Lions. It's a lot more running rugby, a lot more ball in hand. It's not as much kicking as what Jake White did. I mean, if I take an example of the players that actually played well under Jake White and who are actually currently playing well under Johan Ackerman, the guys who I think played well under Jake White, you look at, if I take backline play specifically, um, obviously because I think that's Johan Ackerman's game. You look at someone like Sergio Peterson, who I think was alright under Jake White. David Creel, I think currently is playing in the wrong position. I'd play him inside centre because I don't think his attributes work with any other position. But David Creel, Johan Goosen, Zach Berger, all these types of guys under Jake White had really played really well. And then you look at Johan Ackerman and you see, Sebastian de Klerk obviously came in under Jake White, but I think Sebastian de Klerk has hit new heights. Trevino Jacobs has now started coming into the team, and I think he looks, quite decent. Obviously playing a lot more running rugby, which is more of his strength compared to playing in the air. I don't think he's very strong when it comes to aerial duels. So yeah, small things again, just the way the type of rugby that they play. But yeah. I mean, look, I think also the problem now is we do have a lot of injuries, which is a big issue. If I take it fly half, Cade Bollitter was absolutely shocking today. I don't think I've seen a worse performance from a professional rugby player at fly half in my life. But yeah, he had an absolute shocker. Person should be there, but isn't. Hanekom obviously not there. Ulrich Lowe is recently coming back from injury. But look, like I said, I think it's a case of these guys don't. And the thing is, I'm not saying they're necessarily rubbish players. I just think they're not suited to the way that Johan Ackerman wants to get them to play. And yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I don't even really know anymore. I think the problem also is what we've mentioned. Defense is a massive problem, and that's come from. I mean, Jake White did have his issues with defense as well, but yeah, it's almost getting worse now for whatever reason. So, like I said, in my opinion, I think it should be a case of coaches coming in that has the same philosophy, because I don't necessarily think that the coaches that are around him now do. And I think in terms of the players Jake White brought in, I don't think are particularly suited to what Johan Ackerman wants to play. And yeah, that's probably where I am.
Don't you think on defense it's actually the players that need to own up, I mean, they obviously need to adapt to a certain structure that they want the guys to defend. What I've seen now, feel that the players aren't coming to the party, As you mentioned, there's some players that you want them to go. But at the end of the day, it's a team effort, and from number 1 to number 15 needs to know exactly what their philosophy is with regards to how they will defend. And then they need to apply that, because obviously in that first half there was instances where you were physically dominating them on defense. You forced them to make mistakes. I could see there was a real effort, but once the second half started, it was gone. They didn't pitch, they didn't bring that same physicality, they didn't bring that energy. It was as if they stayed in the locker room after half time. I mean, they could have just as well not pitch again. So I don't know, like if it's a mental thing, if it's a thing of they don't want to bring that physicality, they don't want to bring that 110% to the match. I don't know, because it just looks like they don't bring that energy that they need to for the full 80 minutes.
I mean, again, it's a second half issue where we start okay, and like Bordeaux, we were behind in this game, but we weren't far behind. We were still very much in the game. And then second half, we just kind of slump. We give up, and I think, I mean, there was no real excuse last weekend because we were ahead. But I mean, this today's game, it was, they scored a try, and then heads dropped and we just kind of gave up from there. And I do think, you can't blame everything on the coach, or the coaches rather, because I mean, if I think about the lineouts, there were a couple of lineouts where, you know, we throw the ball in and no one jumps, and then they go and steal the ball. It was almost as if it was their lineout, just with Akker throwing the ball in. It was, I don't know if it was miscommunication, or I mean, again, I can't really say what it was, but it seems to be mentality seems to be a bit of an issue. Um, I think when they scored that try to go 21-5 up, from there on we just kind of looked dead on our feet, and it looked like I said, they should be investigated, because I don't think they really know how to play the game after that third try. But it was a shocking performance. Like I said, I don't think I've seen a worse performance from a Bull side. Where, yeah, again, like you said, it just looked like they didn't show up, or they didn't really want to play, and that is a problem. But yeah, but I mean, I suppose the question is also, last weekend we had the bomb squad, Springbok squad, coming back playing for the Bulls, and the same thing happened. So, I think the question is, where is the issue?
Oh, look, I think it's a play issue. I mean, you should bring that physicality, that energy to every game that you play. I mean, as you mentioned, they should be investigated for that because, I mean, if it was in a business sense, and you had people that does not perform the way you need them to perform, I mean, what will you do? I mean, you will first obviously start to give them warnings, try to get them to where you want them to be, and then if it doesn't work, you will work them out. So if this was a business and if people keep on delivering these performances, they would have been out of the door. So then you would have gotten someone new in because, I mean, you can't pay someone the big bucks weekend after weekend and then they just don't pitch up. So I think it's really a need from the players, to own up to their responsibilities, to bring the same energy that they will if they are a Springbok or a big name player. You need to bring your A game. And from number 1 to 15, I think it's really a thing of everyone needs to be at 110%. If you have someone that lacks that extra 10%, then the whole team will drop. So that for me is where they need to change. I mean, you can just look at successful teams, like the Springboks in 2019, in 2023. It's a team effort because, I mean, in 2019, none of these guys were big name players. I mean, they picked a World 15 team, and I think it was only Peter Steph in that team. And I mean, the rest of the guys, where were they? So you need a squad where everyone is committed. And we can go back to the Stormers. I mean, we mentioned this before, not big name players, but I mean, they get the work done, they get the victories, and their defense is excellent. So I think that's where you should make that mental shift towards players that gives their 110%, and those guys that doesn't, put them aside and get someone that wants to give their 110% for the team.
No, definitely. I think they should be put under performance review, and then be worked out that way. So yeah, I mean, look, if it's an arrogance thing, then you've already lost them, and those players should be moved on. Being arrogant because you think you if it is this, if you're arrogant and you think you've made it because you play for the Bulls, you really haven't made it. What's weird for me is everyone's dream is to play for the Springboks, or go on to play international. You want to look good, and you want to you play for your family, and that sort of thing. It's as if these guys, like I said, don't really care. Walk around, they don't really. In this game, it really didn't look like they were interested in playing at all, and except for the first half. So it's a massive issue. But I mean, like you said, 2019 World Cup team for the box. I think the thing was, they believed in Rossi as a coach, and they believed in what he had to say and what he wanted to do, and they bought into his philosophy and what he did. Where, do these players actually buy into the philosophy that Johan Ackermann has brought into the Bulls? I think that's something that should be asked and questioned. And again, if there's players that don't buy into it, then a simple fact is they need to leave at the end of the day. Um, if you don't believe in the coach's philosophy, he's the one who sets everything up, and he should have the final say. And yeah, if the player doesn't believe, then simple fact is he has to go.
Definitely. And if we can look at the game as well, if we look at the standout players, I got to actually ask you who stood out for you because I don't
Okay,
think
I'm
there
very
was
curious.
anyone. Yeah, you mentioned like Kate Follett didn't have a good game. Obviously, have an issue on fly off, but the other issue that I have from a neutral's perspective is inside center. I mean, look, Harold Forster is probably a solid player. I don't know. He didn't have a good game this weekend. The previous weekend, he didn't have a good game. He's just struggling. I mean, all that he can do currently is carry the ball. He can't pass the ball. He can't kick the ball. And I mean, you have one of the most exciting back threes. I mean, if it's your A or B team, it doesn't matter. You want them to get the ball as much as possible. But for me, it just feels like you get the ball to your number 12 and then he doesn't know what to do, and then he tries to give a kick, then he knocks the ball, or he can't pass the ball, he takes on the defense, but then you're back behind the advantage line. So I think that's a real issue.
I mean, look, our issue was from. I mean, I can't blame Zach for anything really, and I thought Ambrose did okay when he came on, but wasn't really in the game. Kate Volater having the shocker that he did was also a massive issue. But I agree, Harold Foster inside centre just doesn't work. He is too selfish with the ball. He really doesn't have a distribution game. He's carry. I mean, the thing is, he's not like Andre Esterhuizen where he's gonna take two or three guys down or gain 5 meters from a carry. He's not that sort of player, and he kind of acts like he is. And there was an instance where again, very frustrated, but someone from them knocked the ball. Ball came to him somehow. I can't remember if it was passed from one of our players or whether the ball was knocked on and went straight to him. But there was a kind of an overlap on his outside, and he decided, okay, let me cut in and took the ball in, and you lose that situation. I mean, we learned from a young age that turnover ball means you go wide, and because defensive structures obviously aren't in place, it's kind of scrambled. So if you can find an opportunity, go wide, and if you can get your winger um, in open space, then there's an opportunity there to really good have a good counter attack. But with Harold Foster, it's no, I'm just going to take the ball in, and that's the end of it. And the problem is, it's very predictable. People know he's not going to pass the ball, so they know, okay, tackle him, no problems, spread the defense, and then the Bulls lose any opportunity that they have. And it's weird because I was quite excited when he initially signed because I thought we were getting the player that was at the Lions a couple of years ago under Johan Ackerman as well, and he started his Bulls career quite well. But from there, it's just absolutely fell off a cliff. And in my opinion, David Kriel and Jan Serfontein are the two that we have to build with at inside center. And Harold Foster, I think, is one of those players that really needs to get a move on. So, but I mean, with that being said, today's game, I think you can go through 1 through 23. You can find a problem with anything that they did. I really don't think there was a player that stood out. I just think there were players that didn't have as bad a game as others.
And Devin Williams, is he your solution on fullback?
100%. I mean, what a player. The only bright spark in today's game. Didn't put a foot wrong. Fantastic. No, I'm joking. No, look, he's also a massive issue. Not good under the high ball. He's quite quick, but the problem is what he does is with his speed, he tries to beat guys on the outside. And what he does then is he closes the space for the winger. So when if he can't beat his man on the outside, then he just closes the space for the winger, and the winger doesn't have any opportunity to, hit the gap. The winger then has to cut inside and then take a tackle and form another ruck. So yeah, he's really just not. He's just not that. And the Bulls are probably worse than the Sharks because the Sharks at least know that there's someone coming back at fullback who's half decent. Where the Bulls, Devin Williams next weekend, it's Willie LaRue. So wow, fantastic. So no, I think the Bulls have a massive issue, and that's where I think Johan Ackerman and the rebuild needs to start is we need to start finding, even if it's decent players in those positions where we struggle. I think that's where, yeah, the rebuild needs to start.
Yeah, I think moving on swiftly. Challenge Cup. I mean, also not a good weekend. Lions
Oh,
losing.
by the way, I think I got all my predictions right, eh? From all my predictions I made, I think I said Bulls and Lions to lose, Stormers and Sharks to take the win.
Well done. You're learning from the best, I see.
I thought I'd try my jinx and say, okay, Stormers are gonna win and then they lose, and then the Bulls are gonna lose but then they win.
Yeah, no, you should follow the specialist here. Back the Stormers and don't back the Bulls.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, I'm
But
only gonna watch the Bulls.
then we will have nothing to talk about next weekend.
Well, I
But
mean,
yeah,
that's
any
a good
case,
thing because then I won't have to say all the bad things about the Bulls. That I mean, I could say a lot more about the Bulls today, about today's games, but yeah,
yeah, I
I don't
wish we
know.
had this podcast right after the game. I think it would have made for some interesting listening.
Would have been yeah, rated, language PG, what's it, PG.
Yeah. But I think you have big problems. I think the Lions have more problems. I mean, losing to Newcastle Red Bulls. I mean, they haven't won a game yet this season since returning to the Premiership. I mean, it's a bottom of the log team in the Premiership, and you can't even beat them. I mean, it was just another shocking performance.
I mean, it was quite a boring game. It wasn't really anything special that happened. I think the one talking point that we can really get into is Angelo David's yellow card. I mean, I honestly thought he was going to get a red. Swinging arm knocked the guy out. I thought, no, he's off, and it wasn't even just a yellow, so I was quite surprised about that one.
Yeah, I think he was really lucky. I think he can count his lucky stars for that. Yeah, it was really a snooze fest. It wasn't an interesting game, and I mean, you almost expected that from the teams they selected, and that was the argument last week. Why do we always keep on picking these types of teams? So yeah, I don't know. I don't think they are managed as they should be. They together with the Bulls obviously are struggling, and I think they also need an overhaul of their management structure there because, as also with the Sharks, I mean, they have some of the best players and potential best players in the country. So the question is, why aren't they reaching that potential? And the problem that I'm having is some of our best young players are currently at the Lions, and if they keep on with this trend, those players won't reach their potential. So they will just keep on being average players, playing for a below average team, and they will get used to that style of play. And you should be in a high performance environment where you want to be the best, beat the best, and currently they are not that team. So it's really concerning from a Springbok point of view to know that most of your best young players and potential players are currently at the Lions.
No, 100%. I mean, I always describe games like this is it's a low quality game between two low quality teams, and I think that's what it ended up as. And I do think it's concerning to have, a lot of good young players at the Lions and they aren't getting the opportunity. And I think that the problem with that is we can all say, you have some of the country's best players, so you should be building with them. I think the problem that the coaches have is they have too many young players and not enough experienced, good quality players, and they're finding experienced players where they can, how no matter how bad they are, because I mean you can't have a team of 19-year-olds 1 to 23. So I think that's also the issue is they have a philosophy of let's go out and get the best young players, which is great. But then you have guys like Hashim Peed and these types of players who really aren't getting game time because the coaches would rather go with Morne van der Berg, who has a couple of years of experience, and Nico Steyn, who himself is also quite young, but has at least a year or two of experience playing professional rugby. So I think it's a catch-22, stuck between a rock and a hard place. But yeah, the Lions, the quality of I mean, you can argue the quality of their first team isn't particularly great. And when you move past that and pick a team like they did this weekend, it doesn't look very good for them. So yeah, it's unfortunately the way of the land. And you see, I mean, with that being said, you look at guys like Henku van Wyk. We all think this guy is going to be the next outside centre for the box, but he can't even get game time because he's always on the injury bench. So you have that issue as well. So yeah, it's a tough one, I think. But yeah, the Lions just obviously don't have the quality that the other teams have.
Yeah, look, I think with the current setup, they obviously have a lot of youngsters. Most of these guys have been playing now since 2020, 2021. They are experienced campaigners. So you can't really say that they have like a whole team of 19-year-olds. So I think most of them are currently experienced campaigners. I mean, between the age of 24 to 26. So it's not as if they don't have the experience. I mean, these guys have the experience, but the point that I'm trying to make is they are gaining this experience under a coaching staff that leads them in this direction where they don't have that high performance mindset in the sense of, oh, look, we can actually win the URC, we can win Champions Cup rugby. They are just trying, let's see if we can finish in the top eight of the URC. So I just think that's why they are where they are currently. I mean, 6 years at the helm, you haven't achieved anything. You had the best youngsters, they are now at their peak, but they're not performing where they should be. So I think that's one of the problems for me.
No, look, I hear what you're saying. I mean, with that being said, I think the only experienced players that they actually have that are good, or that I would consider good, is players like Frankie Horn, which is also probably up for debate. Henko van Wyk, Kieran Horn, Gianni Lombard, who played today, who I don't think. Sorry, no, actually, I don't think he's necessarily really great, and I don't think he's the quality that you would want as a first team option. So yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at, is the experienced players that they have aren't really good at a level that you probably want your first teamers to be. And then looking past your first team, the depth quality isn't particularly great when it comes to the experienced players. Yeah, like I said, you can have the world of talent at 18, 19, 20, but it's difficult to put a team out with those players because you don't really know how they're going to fare against your more experienced top quality sides and players that are probably right now better than what they are. Um, yeah, but I mean, with that being said, I think young players and their opportunities. If we look at players coming from the junior box, Kekani, for example, who played last weekend, had a really good, well, I wouldn't say a really good game. I think he was one of the better players for the Sharks. Him with Ross Brody, who also hasn't really gotten any opportunity at the Sharks. Cheswell Yusta has gotten some opportunity, but injuries has prevented him a bit. Same with JJ Tron and then Hashim Pete. So it's these young players aren't actually getting the opportunities, even though there's a lot of rugby being played. And I think that's a conversation that could possibly be brought into it as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest one is obviously Hashim Pete, not getting his opportunity because I mean the player probably of the series for South Africa. I mean he's seen as the next Anton de Pont. And I would have thought that the Lions would have given him an opportunity a long time ago, but then they pick him on the bench and they don't even give him 5 minutes to play. I mean, that's just wasting someone's time. So, yeah, I don't know. It's probably, yeah, the decisions they make that aren't that great at the moment.
No, I do agree. I think it's frustrating not seeing Hashim Pete given more of an opportunity. Like I said, I think it's a conversation to be had with a lot of the youngsters. That I mean, we have a junior box side that won the tournament, yet we're seeing no one really given opportunities in the senior sides, except for Cheswell Yusta, like I said. But obviously, injuries is becoming his Achilles heel now. So yeah, I think it's an issue, but I do agree that the Lions, Hashim Pete, the next Anton Dupont, I think is a bit going a bit overboard at the moment. But obviously, a very good, looks like a very good, talented player that should be getting more opportunity than he currently is. And yeah, for whatever reason, he isn't. and it's like I said, I think it's a massive problem considering the quality of the Lions team as well.
Yeah, but I think that was the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup done. This weekend is another exciting weekend. We will see some URC action, but yeah, we will look at that at another time. I think that's it from our side. Thanks for listening again. Please like and subscribe. YouTube, follow us on Facebook, and let us know what your opinions are with regard to the Bulls, the Lions. Also, do you think the Sharks are heading in the right direction? Yeah, thank you, Carl. Thanks for your time. Always nice.
Thank you, Mr. Rakanorris. You must have a good one further.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, cheers.